Good afternoon. Welcome to our last webinar of the year. Today's topic is actually hot topics in the appraisal world. And My name is Sally Carruthers. I am the president of True Union, and my colleagues and I run this place. And today we're going to talk about some things that may be happening and some things that may kind of scare us or worry us, and maybe changing some of the way that we do business. I am going to try and go through these items, not necessarily giving my own opinion, but try to point out both sides of what's going on, and maybe voice concerns or try to assuage concerns. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, if you feel strongly about some of these topics or anything I've said, please email me and we will share those comments with anybody that has registered on the webinar, and maybe start a dialogue on some of the situations that we are seeing right now in the appraisal world. Housekeeping items. You are all on mute. You should be. We have quite a few of you, so we try to kind of control the conversation. So you should just be able to hear me and me not hear you. And any commentary can be done via email at the end. So this is the second time I have done this webinar. I did it last week in the morning. I run a little bit over, so I will try to zip through this a little quicker so that you can get on with what you have to do. So without further ado, let's go into some of these hot topics. So some of the things that I really want to talk about, I say reinventing appraising. I think that may be true and it may not be true. I think it's a fact or fiction. There will certainly be some changes in how we do business, and things don't stay static. Any of us that have been in the business a long time know that things aren't static. So I think that we have to embrace some of these changes. We may want to put off some of these changes. We may not want to be part of some of those changes. But they are going to come, and how we embrace them, it's really an individual business decision sometimes. So things we're going to talk about is the 2019 AMC. What does the modern day AMC look like? Very different probably from when AMCs really started to kind of take off in 2008, 2007, 2008 with HBCC, and then later Dodd-Frank. The changes to the appraisal threshold. You have probably heard that the federal agencies have raised that threshold from $250,000 to $400,000, and the kind of impact that potentially could have on our business, if any. We're going to talk about appraisal waivers in particular as they relate to Fannie and Freddie. They actually come out as property inspection waivers, but they're actually appraisal waivers, and how those arise and any impact again to our way of doing business. We will talk about bifurcated appraisals, a major topic in our industry right now. Kind of two-pronged kind of a process where we have a third-party inspection of the property, and the appraiser essentially does an appraisal from the desktop. Whether you want to do that or not, how those are, how they relate to our current business, how they impact our current business, and then just a conversation about technology and some of the things I see that will impact our business as we in the coming years. So let's look at what is actually good in the appraisal world, and then we're going to look at what is bad. Because anytime there's a change, there is usually a reaction to something, and a need for that change. So what is good right now? Well, I think number one, the most important thing is that we have professional, high quality appraisers. I would say that I couldn't have said that necessarily 10, 15 years ago. I think that some of the changes in appraisal qualifications, I think just the Great Recession, absence of some of the bad eggs getting out of the business has resulted in really a professional, high quality appraisal profession. I think we can say that. I know the reports I look at day in, day out, absolutely incredible. I could say that's just my panel because I think you guys really are very, very good. But I think generally we do have a high level of professionalism in our business. Independence. I think we are able to give now an unbiased opinion of value. We may not have liked the hoops that we had to go through to obtain appraiser independence, including AMCs. But I think we are free from that continual push on value. It still exists somewhat, but that push usually is after you've provided your opinion, not before. And of course, if there is any push on your value, that should be reported to your client or the AMC that you work for. I think we have multiple accurate sources of comprehensive data. A lot of you guys have worked very, very well with your local MLS to ensure that you have really good data. I think we have other data available to us too. Gosh, I remember the days of driving to the courthouse and going through their files and only being able to copy, a property card twice a day or whatever it was. And I think access to online data it is much better than we've had before. We have sound and tested valuation methodology. Things have changed and there is more data, there is, access to data, there's all kinds of things, but the same appraisal methodology, basically our three approaches to value have remained solid. They stand the test of time. So I think that's a really good thing in our appraisal world. I think appraisal provides an excellent career choice with a high potential earning ability. It's a great job to get into if you want to, go through the apprenticeship. But I think it is a great job to get into as a young person or even as a retired person, a veteran. I think it provides a very good way of making a living. And I think that overall, appraisals are reliable. They mitigate risk. I look at the SSR scores on our appraisals. I think they're 70% or more of them have get day one certainty. So they're getting a score 2.6 or below on the SSR. So I think that we are mitigating risk. We're providing a reliable, independent opinion of value. So that is what is good. And I think that is overall seen by our clients, lenders, and that type of thing. So what is bad in the appraisal world? Well, there are a few things that aren't so good. And you may disagree with these things, but they are they're there and they're seen by either our clients or the profession as being bad. One is the cost. Whether we like it or not, the appraisal fee now is a combination of your fee and the AMC fee. The lender no longer manages, in most cases, the appraisal process. They no longer hire people to manage appraisals. They no longer keep appraisal data in-house or do have reviewers. Most of that is outsourced to an AMC, and they have to pay a fee for it. And The issue is that you have to get paid, and myself as an AMC has to get paid. Now, my fee should not be anywhere near your fee. For managing the service, you really are still providing the appraisal and providing the opinion of value, but we still have to get paid for it. And when the consumer looks at the cost, it is the entire cost. They're paying for both of them. And that's kind of unfair. I mean, I think in some ways, I don't know how the client, or to my clients out there, how my clients have managed to get away from having to for there is still the issue of speed. You guys are doing a wonderful job most times. We get our appraisal reports in 7 days, but of course everybody wants that yesterday. So speed and the time it takes to get an appraisal is still seen as an impediment. They can get title much quicker, an AVM instantly. So the time it takes to get an appraisal, 7 days, is seen as, when you look at it, a client that's trying to close in 2 weeks, that 7 days really is an issue. One of the things is the lack of technology. As much as we talk about technology, we are still kind of a little bit in the dark ages as far as our appraisal work is concerned. We're still using software that comes back somewhere to our forms are from 2005, and nobody's done anything to really update our software a great deal in that time because everyone's waiting on Fannie Mae developing new forms. So we still basically just go through this kind of spreadsheet and fill out, a form online. And there are some tools for mapping, and at least we have digital photographs. We're not sticking on photographs anymore. And there are some integrations that are good, but we're still stuck in this form filling kind of mentality right now. And there isn't any interaction with any available data. So we have our clients, their access to data through collateral underwriter, and appraisers don't have that. I think that will change in the future. And the other thing is that there are still barriers to getting into the appraisal profession. It's still hard to get an apprenticeship. It's still a long time to get your apprenticeship. It is very onerous, especially if you go through, a certification route with a 4-year degree, and then you're, going to apprentice for, 2 or 3 years afterwards and take additional classes. It's tough. There are barriers. A lot of appraisers work independently, and you have to ask if a college graduate really wants to go and work for someone who essentially works out of their basement. So there are barriers right now. I think that those things have to change. And I know that the Appraisal Foundation and various organizations are moving to try and get some alternatives for that experience. So we'll see how that goes. One thing I want to talk about is before we go any further, is to understand that there is more to appraisal than just evaluation. If your job was just to put a value on a piece of property, it could be done in seconds with an AVM. It could maybe be done with far less of a professional than any of you guys. But what you have to sell is something a lot more than just value. The most important thing is independence. If it wasn't for the fact that we were independent, realtors would be putting values on properties. But we know that they're biased, right? They might want a listing, they might want to sell the property, whatever it is. So independence is an important part of being an appraiser. We have ethical standards. We have a whole set of we have USPAP, and my friend Damwani always says USPAP is your friend. It is your friend, and because of those ethical standards, we are a profession. We provide a lot of research and analysis, and we don't just kind of plunk down three sales and say, hey, there's a value like an AVM does. We do a lot of research. We look at markets. We look at what is trailing, what's coming in the future, the analysis that needs to go into it. So there's a lot of research and analysis in what we do. We also have sound methodology. We have a system that we go through to come up with a value. There's very sound, tested methodology in our approaches to value. So those are things I think that you have to look at that make us a lot more marketable. We're not just a value, we're an appraisal. So let's look at the modern AMC. I've worked for AMCs for a long time. Actually, I worked for one back in the 90s. Originally, I was a staff appraiser for one years ago, early 90s. So I kind of been, even though we kind of think of this as being something fairly recent, AMCs have been around for a long time. Obviously, the proliferation occurred in, 2008 when 2007, 2008 with HVCC, and it plunged a lot of companies into the AMC world who knew nothing about how to do it. They were often title companies, and they kind of got into it because they had clients that needed an AMC instantly. Things have changed, I think, over the last 10 years. There has certainly been, I guess, a kind of, a culling of the crowd. There are far less AMCs than there used to be, and that's not surprising based on the cost of compliance and that type of thing. I think there's been a lot of bad publicity for the predatory AMCs out there, the ones that are really trying to take your fee. And so I think that the modern AMC is a lot different, and I hope that we are a lot different. And some of the things I think I see and what we try to do is kind of transparency of fees, ensure that we're perfectly transparent. We'll tell you what our fee is and what your fee is, and we'll never not pay customary and reasonable fees. And it's not a race to the bottom. We're not always instantly looking for the cheapest appraiser out there. And we'd rather have relationships with appraisers and get the best appraisers. And if we have to pay for that, that's fine by me, because we'll keep our clients and we keep everybody happy. I think that client relationships are incredibly important. And what I mean by that is that it's that our relationship with our client and your relationship with us. And not sure that existed before. Having worked in a large AMC company, before this, I saw where clients came and went. There was no kind of it was, let's just get this and make the most money we can. And that's not really very easy in the AMC world. And so I think that we provide a service. Our job is to manage the appraisal process for our client, and we encourage a relationship with our appraisers. AMCs have the advantage of being very technology driven, and and it helps us to manage that process. We know instantly turn times, how your volume, where you're located. We are able to integrate with our clients so that they'll just put an order in for a loan, and then the appraisal order gets generated to us instantly. We deliver it to them. We deliver it to the borrower. So I think that the days where clients, the banks, credit unions, managed appraisal panels with spreadsheets and that kind of thing don't exist anymore. The AMCs are very technology driven. They're very specialized in what they do. So able to kind of just create a lot more efficiencies with that technology. And also we're able to preserve appraiser independence. And hopefully you don't find yourself pushed in any way, or feel that you have, you're forced to do something that you don't want to do. I think that the AMCs have taken over quality control. Underwriters can concentrate on the parts of the loan that aren't the appraisal. If we can deliver an underwriter-ready appraisal, they don't have to worry about it. And I think with that, there is a certain level of cost control. And again, that kind of relates back to the transparency of fees. We have, fees set with our clients, and there's a fee for our management. Everybody knows what that is, and they're able to disclose that. Clients are able to disclose that to the consumer, to the borrower, member of the credit union. So I think that some of the weird stuff that happened before has gone away. So what is the AMC hangover? There are things that are still out there, and I still hear these stories, and I hope that we're never, kind of part of that issue. But fee transparency. There are still AMCs who are trying to grab your fee. There are those out there, and they're still trying to maximize their margins and at the detriment of the appraiser. Everyone wants to make money, but why take that off the back of the appraiser? The state registrations are onerous for AMCs. All the states are different. There is a minimum standard, but they're all different. So managing compliance on the state registrations is both time consuming and costly. We now pay a fee for each of our appraisers on our fee in each state. So it becomes quite difficult to do. And how I said is, the costs are different. Some have to have, different requirements, and not one of them is the same. So it may cost $500 to renew in one state and $5,000 in another state. And, one may require this and one may require that. There is no consistency there whatsoever. So it's kind of, and the other thing about the state registrations is they are usually run by the state appraisal board. So because licensing, it's a state issue. And so they're not seeing that the AMC really is a kind of a corporation, and they look at it as an individual, and that becomes quite kind of different to kind of manage too. I think that the AMC sometimes have an unreasonable turn time. I see that even in our own business. We're pretty flexible in as if you can't make our turn time, that's fine. We'll pass on to someone who may be able to, but we'll come back to you on another assignment. Some AMCs are not like that. I still want to get it out to the best person possible, but I realize that person sometimes has, things they are doing at that time. They may have, particular projects. So unreasonable. I understand those turn times, but realize also that our clients are competing. Our client credit unions are competing with other lenders in their area, and they're competing to close that loan as quickly as possible. So everything gets passed down. So I understand that. But all we can say is, if it doesn't work for you this time, hopefully it'll work next time. And then there are the appraiser bullies. I think some AMCs just bully appraisers. I need to know when you're going to get this in. I need your inspection date. I need this, and this. Ours is very simple. Just complete it in our system, and we're going to be okay with that. But I know that there are what I call those AMC appraiser bullies. So that's my kind of take on the AMC world. Hopefully we're doing the right thing. If we're not, then please get hold of me. So effective, let's talk about this change to the appraiser threshold. So effective October 9, 2019, it was increased from $250,000 to $400,000. just to give you a little kind of insight, in our world, which is credit union world, when we only work for credit unions, um, about 42% of our transactions are 250,000 or less. About 85% of our transactions that we do at TruUnion are 400,000 and below. So that's kind of immediately rather scary, right? That's like, oh my gosh, that's going to do everything. That's going to take up everything. But I think that the narrow definition of federally related financial transactions kind of limits that, because it does not apply, that transaction does not apply to anything sold to Fannie or Freddie, or FHA, VA, USDA. All those are not related federally related financial transactions. And so I'm not sure that this threshold is being used. And then, they say it may be completed in place by an evaluation in place of an appraisal. So in our world, credit union world, I think that I see the evaluations are obviously done AVMs. It is done a lot on the equity side, but not once you get onto the first mortgage side. And our credit unions are obviously, often shelving a lot of their loans, so they're not actually selling them to Fannie and Freddie. So while there is this option under the threshold, I'm not sure how often it is really, really kind of utilized, and probably mostly on the equity side. So what is a federally related transaction? Any transaction that involves a federal financial regulatory agency. So that is kind of anything that's under the credit union regulation too. So, but as I said, does it apply? I don't know. It doesn't include Fannie and Freddie, and doesn't include FHA, USD, and VA. So what does the rule say? The federal increases the threshold from 250,000 to 400,000. And essentially, it's supposed to kind of be a reflection of inflation since 1994, when this de minimis or threshold was put in. So now it does say that banks retain the discretion to use appraisals, and I think this is really, really important. I think that the discretion is often still there to use an appraisal. So contents of an evaluation. Under 2000 Interagency 2010, they kind of describe what an evaluation is. And it has to have a value opinion, commercial or residential. It cannot be a BPO. That's really important. Maybe automated. It may or may not include an inspection, but an inspection is recommended. So what we see some of our clients do is that they will order an AVM, but also a separate property inspection too. It should address the physical condition and characteristics, so that would make sense to do that, to have that inspection. Address economic and market conditions, and that actually an AVM does include that, some data on that in the AVM, and not include any supported assumptions. So that would be something like, zoning's never going to change, or something like that. What it doesn't do is include a highest and best use analysis. It's obviously not USPAP compliant. There's a lot of things that an evaluation isn't. So, I think that there are, and the other thing is, can appraisers be allowed to do evaluations? I think that there should be some opportunities for that, and I know that the Appraisal Foundation is looking at that right now, especially on the commercial side, where evaluations that really mimic appraisals are being done. And under interagency, kind of got rid of the old restricted and So I think that we're gonna and the changes in USPAP are gonna kind of make some changes too to this. So I think there will be some reactions to this. I don't think that you will see if you're a bread and butter first mortgage, purchases, refinance kind of appraiser doing credit union work. I'm not sure you're going to see that much impact of the appraisal waivers. Of course, I might be wrong. I don't know. What I do think we have seen is some impact of these appraisal waivers from Fannie and Freddie. They are basically saying that these don't amount to much more than about 10% of their work. I don't know that. I just think that even though we've had a very nice kind of refi boom this year, it could have been so much more if it wasn't for these appraisal waivers. And I know that these are being done by some of our clients. So, the ability to get these come out of the day one certainty. And day one certainty essentially relieves the lender from enforcement of representations and warranties on the value, condition, and marketability of a property. So if you do an appraisal and you have an SSR score of less than 2.6, that's the risk score, the lender will get day one certainty. So they're kind of relieved of these any potential enforcement under these reps and warranties. And the same relief is there for an appraisal waiver. Obviously, there is no appraisal, so no one's going to try and buy back a loan based on the appraisal if the appraisal doesn't exist. So the preference from a lender standpoint, obviously, is to be able to get an appraisal waiver, perhaps if they can. Although there are lots of circumstances in which, perhaps the borrower wants one, or there are a lot of credit unions may sell to Fannie and Freddie. They underwrite to Fannie and Freddie's requirements, but they may decide to shelf the loan. So that's why we usually see on the credit union side a preference towards the appraisal. So keep with us. I think you're going to be safe. These waivers are available for one unit, limited cash out refinance transactions, principal second homes, investment properties, purchase transactions, up to 80% of the loan to value. A lot of properties that these appraisal waivers are eligible for. They are not eligible for new construction. The big one right now, 2 to 4 family, anything over $1 million, home style loans. That's a renovation, Fannie renovation loans, co-ops, leasehold properties, the Texas 50A6 for our guys down in Texas, or where the lender believes an appraisal is warranted. And here's the big thing: for an appraisal waiver to be considered, there must be a prior appraisal, must be found in the CU database. So that property has had to have been appraised at some point since UCDP went into effect in 2010. So that kind of makes a big difference. And I think what Fannie and Freddie is saying is that they don't think that percentage is going to go up. They think it's going to hover right around where it's at. And I think that's kind of true. I don't think they're going to increase, what is eligible and ineligible. In order for their CU database to work, they have to have appraisals. They can't stop having appraisals. So they need to keep putting that data in there. But I think the skims off, the top bits, and sometimes, as all of us know, that's the easy stuff. So it kind of skims off some of that stuff and allows that to happen. So we probably, in the last couple of years, have lost, a percentage of our business to these appraisal waivers. And, as we look at stuff that kind of gets eroded away, the equity stuff that is being done on AVMs, the appraisal waivers, some of this stuff is eroding away at our business. But, overall, I think that we compensate still. I think some of us have gone through the busiest time, for a long time in the last few months, so we can't complain at that. Bifurcated appraisals. I don't know if any of you guys have considered doing bifurcated appraisals. I don't know if any of you may have done them. There is right now, actually, I think it may have come to an end, but there was a pilot test out there by Fannie Mae. They had the 1004P. I heard rumors it had stopped right now. So let's kind of talk about these. In essence, so what are they? Essentially a kind of two-pronged thing. Somebody goes out and does an inspection, provides that data to the appraiser, and the appraiser sits at their desk and does the appraisal based on information. The idea is that what is an appraiser good at? Research, analysis, development and reporting of a value. That's the core of an appraiser, and what is seen as being kind of, for want of a better word, grunt work or easy stuff is the actual inspection, and kind of the concept that as professionals, as people who have, and what do I mean by professional? Someone who has had many years of study, education, experience. Should that person be out in the snow, rain, sun, whatever, measuring houses, looking at condition of the property, taking photographs of comparables, things that are perhaps not really, in that kind of realm of professionalism, and more technical, for want of a better word. And I kind of equate this somewhat to, going to the doctors. You go to the doctors and go into that room, and a nurse comes in, or a nurse's assistant, and they are the ones who kind of take your blood pressure and your pulse and all that kind of stuff, and kind of put it all in the database, all that kind of technical stuff. And then the the doctor comes in and does the diagnosis. I think that's the kind of idea behind bifurcated appraisals, that it allows the professional to do what is professional. But there are some questions with it, and I see some issues. Now, one thing is, the major thing is, who's doing the inspection? And where is the kind of liability for that person doing the inspection? What kind of qualifications does that person have to do the inspection? In a perfect world, I would see that as being kind of still part of the appraisal profession, but maybe, either a trainee or somebody, but lesser qualified than a certified appraiser, and somewhat, nurse's assistant or something like that in another profession. I don't know, a paralegal versus an attorney, that kind of thing. So I think that's a big question, who is doing the inspection. The next thing is geographic competence. You're going to sit in your office and do these, but can you do enough of them to make it worthwhile in your market area, or are you going to expand your market area? And then the question of geographic competence comes in. If I am in Columbus, Ohio, am I qualified to also do Cleveland, Ohio, or Cincinnati, Ohio? Or maybe I can go over one state and go into Indianapolis, or maybe I could go down to Lexington, Kentucky. What is geographic competence? How do we test that geographic competence if you're not physically out in the field? And then I think you have to ask what data is provided, and how can you verify that data, and what sources. And then what about use path? Obviously, USPEP doesn't require an inspection by the appraiser, but, are you making extraordinary assumptions, regarding the data provided? Does that person become, you know, um, an assistant in the, in the appraisal, all kinds of things. And I think if you are an appraiser and you've got a client that's asking you to do bifurcated appraisals, often they have their kind of predetermined form or whatever. Make sure that you're reading what they put in there regarding scope of work, limiting conditions, and certifications. Um, the thing that I have an issue, or not have an issue with, that I think we have to look at is, what is your earning capacity? And, if you're being asked to do one of these bifurcated appraisals at your desktop and you're being paid, something ridiculously low, and you have X amount of hours in it, is it worth it? And from what I understand, that might have been with the 1004P. It was somewhat like a 1004, but you're only going to get paid $150, and that wasn't worth it. So some of it depends on your business decision and how it fits into that business plan. So, what is your hourly rate versus your fee? Do you look at your hourly rate? What is the degree of complexity? I think that's important, where the property is located, what type of property, etc. And then, looking at how much time, how much windshield time do you have? Where are you located? Is this a better option? And what is the cost of professionalism? And then, obviously, what is the potential risk? You have to look at that. So some things there that are really kind of important on these bifurcated appraisers, and often it really is, does that fit into your business plan? I know there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in our profession who are very afraid of us going down this route. And I think they have a lot of validity to be afraid, that there are some things that are still unknown. But on the other side, I think we have to be open to different ways of doing business, and realize that old system of us driving around, for hours upon a day, taking, comp photos and doing inspections in the rain and things. I don't know if that is a really worthwhile kind of time for us. Maybe, but may not be. So just different ways of looking at it. I can't tell you if bifurcated appraisers are going to be the way of the future. I have no idea. I don't know how that pilot went for Fannie. I don't know, but I think that it'd be interesting to find out. So let's look at some fun things out there technology-wise. And I'm not totally the tech geek, but I think there are some things. I think things are going to change, and they changed a lot. I think in like that late '90s, and then we came to kind of a frozen time. I mean, I remember going through the thing of getting digital, photography, which was a huge kind of change in our business, not having to take those 1-hour photos, go to the 1-hour photo place, and that kind of thing. And I think just, digital maps and some of that stuff has changed how we do business, but I think there will be more. And I think one thing that we will see is drones. I go back to that kind of windshield time, and I think that I know that drones are being used in a lot of things, whether I guess the Air Force doesn't have so many pilots anymore. They have drones. There are drones being used for tax values. There are drones being used by roofing companies, and there is no doubt that you could send a drone into a property and get all the information that you probably need. And with photography and that kind of thing. And so I think that's something that will happen probably. Big data. So much data out there now, and that's going to increase. And with that, you know, some of it's coming out of Zillow, some of it's coming out of Fannie and Freddie, and I think that we're going to start having access to that data because it'll make us better. And I see finally when they do change the form, there probably will be some interaction with data. So I think that that's going to happen. We are going to get new forms. There is no doubt. I don't know how they'll work. They will. It'll be interesting. At first, I thought they were going to be somewhat like a kind of TurboTax kind of thing, where you sit and answer. It will not be filling out a form. I think that will go away. I think they'll be, data driven too. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But be open to it. I think that we'll see some things that will be very interesting. I think we're going to have increased mobility, and with that, we're going to have to start questioning our traditional thoughts about geographic competence. And increased mobility, increased data, information, and I think that we'll see people work in much wider areas than they have previously. And there is a changing face of real estate right now. I was at a conference recently where they talked about these large companies that just buying up large swaths of real estate, residential real estate, kind of the old days of buying the ugly house where they're buying the pretty house. It's kind of like the old relocation comes, they're just buying houses. So a traditional kind of buyer, seller, realtor kind of transactions are changing. And when you take some of those transactions maybe out of the realtor or away from the realtor, we lose a data source, right? And I think we have to be open to looking at different data sources. I say that to any of my appraisers doing new construction. You can't just hang your hat on that multiple listing service. There are going to be other sources for data, and we have to be very aware of that and really work on those data sources to make sure that we're getting the information that we need. So, and be aware and open to that. So those are some of the technology things I think that are happening. I'm sure there are going to be others, and I will be interested to hear from some of you on that. And, finally, I often end up my webinars talking about advocacy. We've talked about some things here that kind of are controversial, right? And some things that you might not want to see. You might not want to see that threshold change. You may not want to see, I don't think you can do anything about the appraisal waivers, but I always say I promote advocacy. And with that, become involved in if nothing else, just to kind of share data and share information and consult your peers if you need to, if you have a difficult assignment. There are several appraisal organizations, whether it's the Appraisal Institute. Most states have, I think it's 30 plus or minus states now have state appraisal coalitions. Here in Ohio, we have OCAP. Illinois has ICAP. They are absolutely wonderful organizations. Many of them have kind of chapter levels, so you can meet once a month and go have a cup of coffee with some other appraisers or share a beer or whatever you want to do and just talk about appraisals and know what is going on in your profession. And read up on the appraiser literature, the blogs. I know that there's Appraisal Buzz through Joan Trice. There's Phil Kennedy does I think some kind of podcast. There are many other ones out there. I probably missed a whole bunch of them, but there are. I know the Appraisal Institute has a journal with some wonderful articles in it, and so there are some really, really good kind of things out there to read. Read about your profession, understand about your profession, know where it's going. And it could be you may be in a fairly remote, state. Even if you sit down and have a cup of coffee with another appraiser, or your former mentor, or whatever it is, just to know what's going on in your state. I really promote advocacy for our appraisal profession. So I am going to actually, True Union is going to think about doing podcasts next year. I talked about Phil's, and I'm not going to go into competition with him, but I have I really enjoy podcasts, and so we are kind of thinking about doing this next year, and we're putting together some equipment and working on some production on it, and some ideas that we've had floated around was, to talk about spending a day or a few days with a realtor and going in as they list properties, and then as they take potential buyers around properties. So we understand some of the motivations that realtors have the motivations of buyers and sellers going inside a closing, and kind of doing some interactive things. We'd like to take you inside a credit union. We are hopeful one of our credit union partners, or two or three of them maybe, will allow us inside their credit union, interview underwriters and loan officers and processors, and just to see, what is going on there. I'd like to do, to take a tour with an appraisal firm, especially a larger appraisal firm. We're talking about doing, and perhaps with that, kind of doing some, unique kind of interviews with appraisers who have appraised some pretty interesting things. I kind of call out to any of you that have appraised some really interesting stuff. I know there's a gentleman who appraises I think he's appraised the Amityville horror house, and I think the O.J. Simpson, some stuff like that, and I think that will kind of be an interesting kind of some really unique type of properties. I'd really like to kind of spend a day or so in an urban setting with an appraiser in downtown Chicago or New York who does, high-rise buildings and the unique stuff that's done in an urban setting versus a rural setting. Go out to kind of one of our rural areas and spend some time with those guys and look at, the different things that face them. And then I would like to go into a state regulatory agency, go to a board meeting, maybe do a disciplinary thing, and talk to some of our state regulators. So those are some of my ideas, and if you have any ideas, let us know. And we just want to give you something to listen to when you're driving around, and kind of promote the profession a little bit. Promote our credit union partners, and give everybody a kind of shout out and spend some time doing that. So this is my information. If you have any comments on what you heard today, we're going to leave this up for a little bit. It's scarruthers@trueunion.net. Send your comments in. Let us know. We would love to hear from you. And we'll kind of share them with anybody if there's, and if we could kind of start a conversation, that would be great too. I hope everybody enjoyed this afternoon's webinar. This is the last one we're going to be doing this year. So happy holidays to everybody. Be good. Thank you.